The gravel popped under Harlan Pierce's tires as he turned into his inherited 5-acre stretch, the land he had walked as a boy, mapped as a young man, fenced with his own hands, and sworn to protect until his last breath. He expected silence. He expected the familiar embrace of trees, the gentle murmur of the creek, the dirt road his father had carved decades ago. What he did not expect was a house. A full 2-story structure stood on his property, fresh siding gleaming under the morning sun. A gravel walkway wound toward the front door. Potted plants lined the entrance like it had been there for months. A sign staked into the ground read, "Concord Pines HOA, Future Community Rest Hub." Harlan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He had not sold land. He had not given permission. His property was not under any homeowners association and never had been. But a bright orange tag zip-tied to his boundary stake read, Lot 47B, Authorized HOA Expansion. There was no Lot 47B. There never had been. His stomach dropped with the weight of understanding. This was not a mistake. This was a calculated takeover. A black SUV rolled up behind him, and Madeline Crane stepped out wearing a smile that did not reach her eyes. The HOA president walked toward him with the confidence of someone who had already decided the outcome of every conversation she would ever have. "Harlan Pierce," she said, greeting him like a tenant who had arrived earlier and inconvenienced her schedule. "You're here earlier than expected." "For what?" he asked. She gestured casually toward the illegal structure. "Our community expansion. This will become a lakeside amenity property for Concord Pines residents. On my land." Madeline offered a dismissive laugh, light and practiced. "The boundary was reclassified internally last year. This falls under HOA jurisdiction now." Harlan stepped closer, his voice steady despite the fire building in his chest. "In your documents, maybe, not the county's." Her eyes sharpened, the mask slipping for just a moment. "You'll adapt, Mr. Pierce. Everyone does." She brushed past him and unlocked the door of the illegal structure as if she owned every inch of ground beneath her feet. Through the window, Harlan caught a glimpse of blueprints spread across a table, his entire 5 acres marked as Sector C, Future HOA Housing. He drove straight to the county office. Jenna Marks, the records officer, slid historical plats and property maps across the counter. Every single document confirmed what Harlan already knew. His boundary remained untouched in official records. No annexation request had ever been filed. The HOA held zero legal jurisdiction over his land. The mysterious Lot 47B existed nowhere in the county system. Jenna leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Harlan, this building was never filed under anything. No permits, no zoning approval, nothing." "They're trying to steal the land," Harlan said quietly. She nodded, her expression troubled. "They've been nibbling at the edges of properties for years, adjusting fence lines, moving markers, but your 5 acres? This is something else entirely." He left with a thick envelope of proof tucked under his arm. When he returned home, a bulldozer was carving a deeper path into his property, while HOA members stood behind a temporary construction fence, cheering and taking photographs like tourists at a groundbreaking ceremony. That night, Harlan retrieved the old binder his father had left behind. Deed copies, survey photographs, handwritten letters, the original land promise passed down through generations. His father's handwriting stared back at him from a yellowed page. "If anyone ever tries to take this land, you fight with truth, not fear." The next morning, Harlan approached the illegal house. Gerald Pike, a board member with a voice louder than his authority, shouted across the property line, "You're trespassing on HOA property." Harlan held up the stamped county documents. The county disagrees. He unlatched the construction gate and let it swing open. "This structure comes down today." The excavator operator jumped from his machine when Harlan approached, nervousness written across his face. HOA said the land was theirs, the man muttered defensively. He handed him the county paperwork. The operator's expression shifted from confusion to understanding to quiet horror. They lied. This is valid ownership. I'm not touching this job. He placed the excavator keys directly into Harlan's palm. The bucket swung forward, wood splintered, beams cracked. The illegal house folded like wet cardboard under the machine's force. Harlan documented everything: photographs, video, timestamps, GPS coordinates, creating an airtight record of a legal demolition of an illegal structure. He stood over the rubble, breathing hard but steady, when a stranger in a suit approached and extended a thick envelope. Inside was a 47-page lawsuit accusing him of destruction of HOA property, interference with community development, and emotional trauma to board members. The damages demanded totaled $980,000. But what made Harlan's blood run cold was not the absurd claims. It was the attached exhibit, a newly drawn HOA map declaring his land absorbed into the neighborhood through a fabricated boundary realignment, stamped and signed with county seals that never touched official ink. This isn't a lawsuit. This is organized fraud. His phone vibrated. Jenna's voice came through tense and tight. You need to come to the county office tomorrow morning. We found something in the archives. Harlan, this goes much deeper than your land. She had uncovered HOA documents from 6 years earlier, a proposed annexation plan the county had rejected as illegal. Sector C matched the exact outline of Harlan's property. When the county denied their request, the HOA had simply started forging their own documents, creating a parallel paper trail designed to overwhelm anyone who challenged them. The flash drive Jenna handed him contained something even more damning. A recorded HOA meeting showed Madeline Crane standing before her board, outlining their strategy with chilling clarity. The county denied our annexation request, so we proceed internally. We build, we claim, we litigate, we overwhelm. People settle. The room had applauded. Sheriff Nolan Briggs visited Harlan that afternoon. He studied the documents quietly, professionally, then exhaled with the weight of someone who had seen this pattern before. You're in the right, but Madeline weaponizes bureaucracy. She'll drag you through every board, committee, and hearing where she can twist a rule. I'm ready, Harlan said. No, Briggs replied. You're not. I've had 3 other complaints from property owners bordering Concord Pines. Missing markers, fake notices, unauthorized construction. This isn't a dispute, it's organized expansion. Before Harlan could respond, the sheriff's radio crackled with a dispatch report. Madeline Crane was filing a property sabotage complaint against Harlan Pierce. She was already making her next move. At the county building, Madeline stood surrounded by board members waving photographs and shouting accusations. She pointed at Harlan like she was conducting a tribunal. He destroyed HOA property. He threatened our crew. He illegally operated construction machinery. Briggs cut through the noise. Do you have county permits for the structure he demolished? Madeline's composure cracked for a fraction of a second. It was filed internally. That means nothing legally. But Madeline had been busy. A folder in her hand contained a signed injunction approved 8 minutes earlier, barring Harlan from entering his own property until the civil suit concluded. She leaned close, her voice a venomous whisper. Harlan Pierce is hereby forbidden from stepping foot on disputed land. By nightfall, metal fencing surrounded his boundary. Floodlights turned his property into a prison yard. Victor Hale, the trembling vice president who had begun feeding Harlan information, pointed toward the barriers with shaking hands. She's securing the perimeter. She's going to claim uncontested possession. A dropped blueprint revealed the true scope of Madeline's ambition. 30 housing lots, roads, parks, all spanning Harlan's 5 acres. She had already pre-sold the units. The entire HOA expansion was built on fraud, covering earlier fraud. Briggs turned to Harlan, his voice carrying the weight of urgent truth. If we don't stop her now, you're going to wake up tomorrow and find an entire street poured in concrete across your property." Harlan did not sleep that night. He sat at his kitchen table, surrounded by documents, photographs, and the flash drive that contained Madeline's recorded confession. His father's words echoed through his mind like a drumbeat. "Fight with truth, not fear." Before dawn broke across the horizon, he was already moving. Sheriff Briggs arrived with backup officers and a team of county inspectors ready to enforce the law that Madeline had spent years manipulating. The metal fencing glinted under the first pale light, floodlights still burning like beacons of occupation. Victor Hale appeared at the edge of the property, his face gaunt from sleepless nights and the crushing weight of betrayal. He pointed toward distant construction trucks, positioning themselves along the tree line. "They're trying to start pouring foundations before the injunction gets reversed. She knows she's running out of time." Harlan watched the trucks with cold determination. "Then we stop them, right now." Madeline's black SUV appeared on the access road, sunlight flashing off its polished surface. She stepped out with camera crews in tow, her expression arranged into one of wounded righteousness. She intended to paint Harlan as the aggressor, the dangerous man who destroyed community property and threatened innocent homeowners. She approached the fencing with her entourage, her smirk firmly in place. "Harlan Pierce, standing in my way again." "I'm standing on my land," he replied, his voice carrying across the morning air without a trace of doubt. Madeline raised her hand toward the cameras. "Document this. The man who destroys community investment, who threatens peaceful development, who refuses to accept the will of his neighbors." Briggs stepped between them, his badge catching the light. "You will not touch a single thing on this property, Crane. The county is fully aware of your activities, and any illegal entry will result in criminal charges." Her smirk faltered, uncertainty flickering behind her eyes for the first time. The cameras continued rolling, but they were capturing something she had not anticipated. Harlan pulled out his binder, maps, deeds, survey records, and the flash drive containing every piece of evidence Jenna had uncovered. He connected a portable speaker and pressed play. Madeline's own voice filled the morning air, crisp and damning. "The county denied our annexation request, so we proceed internally. We build, we claim, we litigate, we overwhelm. People settle." The crowd went silent. Construction workers stopped moving. Even the camera operators exchanged uncertain glances, realizing they were documenting something far different than what they had been told. Briggs nodded to the county inspectors, who immediately began photographing the illegal fencing, the construction equipment, and every piece of evidence that would seal the case, their clipboards filled with violations. Harlan turned to face the gathered crews directly. "You are standing on property I inherited from my father, who inherited it from his father before him. This land has belonged to my family for generations. No document Madeline Crane has shown you is legitimate. No approval she has claimed exists in any county record. If you proceed with construction, you will be held personally accountable for trespassing and property damage." The workers exchanged nervous glances. One by one, engines shut down. Doors opened. Men climbed out of their vehicles and stepped away from the machinery. Madeline's phone rang. She answered with practiced composure, but as she listened, her face drained of color. Her hand trembled slightly as she lowered the device. Jenna Marks had worked through the night. By mid-morning, she had secured emergency court documents reversing the fraudulent injunction. The judge who had originally signed it, presented with evidence of forged county seals and fabricated annexation records, had issued an immediate reversal, along with a scathing statement about the misuse of his court. The temporary order restored Harlan's full access to his property and declared the HOA's original filings fraudulent and void. Every document Madeline had submitted was now flagged for criminal investigation. Harlan stepped across his boundary line for the first time in days, his boots pressing into soil that had never stopped being his. He surveyed the chaos, the fencing that would soon come down, the construction equipment that would soon be removed, the rubble of schemes that had taken years to build and only days to destroy. Madeline stood frozen, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. "This isn't over," she said, her voice cracking. "Phase 2 will still happen. The courts will see reason." Harlan's response was quiet, but carried the force of absolute certainty. "Not on my land. Not ever." She turned to Gerald Pike and Linda Cho, rage distorting her features into something unrecognizable. "We sue him personally. Everything he has, everything he will ever have." But Gerald was already backing away, his eyes darting toward the county inspectors, documenting everything. Linda clutched her phone, frantically calling someone who might save her from the consequences heading her way. Victor Hale approached Harlan with a thick folder, the final pieces of evidence he had been holding back. Financial records showing HOA funds routed through shell companies, emails discussing the land theft in explicit terms, a complete paper trail that connected every board member to the conspiracy. "This is everything," Victor said quietly. "I should have come forward years ago. I was afraid." Harlan took the folder without judgment. "You came forward when it mattered." The county froze HOA accounts within 48 hours. Construction permits across all of Concord Pines were suspended pending investigation. State authorities opened a formal inquiry into the organization's financial practices, and federal investigators began examining potential wire fraud connected to the pre-sold housing units. Madeline's board members turned on her with the desperation of rats fleeing a sinking ship. Gerald Pike attempted to negotiate immunity in exchange for testimony. Linda Cho claimed she had been manipulated and coerced. Others simply disappeared, selling their homes and fleeing the community they had helped corrupt. The civil lawsuit against Harlan was dismissed with prejudice. The judge's ruling included a detailed condemnation of the HOA's conduct and ordered them to pay Harlan's legal fees, along with damages for emotional distress and lost property access. Madeline faced charges that would take years to resolve: forgery, fraud, conspiracy, misuse of community funds. Her attorney fees alone would consume everything she had spent decades accumulating. The empire she had built through intimidation and manipulation collapsed into dust. Weeks passed. The metal fencing came down. The floodlights were carted away. Work crews removed the debris of the demolished house and restored the land to something approaching its natural state. The creek ran clear again, unburdened by construction runoff. Victor Hale visited one final time, looking years younger despite everything he had endured. "I never thought it would end like this," he admitted. "I thought she was untouchable." Harlan rested a hand on his shoulder. "Nobody is untouchable when the truth comes out. That's all that matters in the end. Truth wins." Victor nodded slowly, a weight lifting from his shoulders that he had carried for far too long. He walked away from Concord Pines that day and never looked back. Harlan stood on the highest point of his property as morning light spilled across the hills. The creek sparkled below, winding through trees his grandfather had planted. Birds sang in branches that had witnessed 3 generations of Pierce men walking this ground. The land stretched before him exactly as it always had, wild, beautiful, and irrevocably his. Sheriff Briggs appeared beside him, surveying the peaceful landscape. "She filed an appeal yesterday, claims the evidence was obtained improperly." Harlan smiled faintly, undisturbed by the news. "Let her try. The law's on my side, the county's on my side, and this land belongs to my family." Briggs nodded, satisfied. "I figured you'd say that." They stood in comfortable silence, 2 men who had fought a battle without firing a shot. The morning breeze carried the scent of pine and fresh earth, and somewhere in the distance, a hawk circled lazily above the tree line. "What will you build here?" Briggs asked eventually. Harlan considered the question carefully. A cabin, maybe. Something small. Something my father would have liked. He paused, watching the hawk disappear over the ridge. Or maybe nothing at all. Maybe I just let the land be what it's always been.
Briggs clapped him on the shoulder and headed back toward his cruiser. "Take care of yourself, Harlan, and call me if anyone else tries anything stupid. You'll be the first to know." Alone again, Harlan walked the perimeter of his property, not to check for threats, but simply to feel the ground beneath his feet. Every step was a reclamation, a quiet declaration that this soil would pass to another generation of his family, untouched by greed or corruption. Near the eastern boundary, something caught his eye. A surveyor's truck sat parked near the tree line, its engine idling. A figure stood beside it, consulting a clipboard and glancing toward Harlan's land. He raised his binoculars and studied the stranger carefully. The truck bore no HOA markings, no Concord Pines logos, county plates, official equipment. The surveyor noticed Harlan watching and raised a hand in greeting, a simple, professional acknowledgement between neighbors. Harlan lowered the binoculars but did not relax entirely. His father had taught him that vigilance was not paranoia, it was simply the price of protecting something precious. He turned back toward the heart of his property, where the old oak trees stood sentinel over the creek. Somewhere in his truck, the binder of documents waited. Deed copies, survey photographs, his father's handwritten letters. He would keep them close for the rest of his life, ready to fight again if necessary. But for now, the land was quiet. The battle was won, and Harlan Pierce stood exactly where he belonged, guardian of 5 acres that no one would ever take from him. The sun climbed higher, burning off the morning mist and warming the earth beneath his boots. He breathed deeply, filling his lungs with air that tasted like freedom and permanence and home. Whatever came next, he would be ready.